All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for participating tonight. It's great to see some familiar faces and all these new faces. Sorry, I'm just monitoring the participants on here. It looks like we have 33 people on here tonight. You're joining us for our WPV-CERT first aid kit review. And my name is Selena Brown. I work for Woodside Fire Protection District. I'm the Public Education Officer and Emergency Preparedness Coordinator for them. So hello to any new people that are here. The way this is going to work is we'll do a short little intro. I believe we'll show a video and then we'll have some discussion afterwards. I also do have some co-hosts today here with me. I have Dr. Vicki Coe. I have Cam McCowan on here, Chip Swan, Emerson Chip Swan, as well as Mark Dolan. So if you guys are familiar with our program, you've heard of those superstars before. So I'm going to hand it over to Vicki to see if she wants to add anything before we start the video for you guys.
Sure.
She can introduce the video.
So just a couple of words. One is welcome and thank you for joining us for our debut of our CERT refresher course series. Although the first aid kit was designed for families, for individual families, a lot of the lessons about organizing it and utilizing it will be useful for CERTs as well. And we made this video so that you would know how to be better prepared.
And if I could just jump in and add that what we're going to do today is that we are going to share the video. This is the same video that is available online on our YouTube channel. And then we're going to discuss some additions to it and also get a chance to do some Q&A about it. So the first section will be about 20 minutes of a video by our own Vicki Coe. While it's running, feel free to ask questions in chat and we will either respond to them in chat or discuss them following the video. So please do stay with us and we'll also then talk some further afterwards.
Hello, I'm Dr. Vicki Coe, and this video is going to be on how to organize and utilize your family first aid kit. On behalf of the Emergency Preparedness Committees for the towns of Woodside and Portola Valley, WPV-CERT and Ready, we want to thank you for taking this step to ensure your family's safety during an emergency. Okay, so let's get started. You're going to need your first aid kit. You're going to need some large and small Ziploc baggies, non-reusable. I'll explain later. You're going to need a Sharpie marker and a label maker if you have one. So imagine the earth starts shaking, windows are breaking, there's glass flying everywhere, and you realize somebody has been injured. So the first thing you're going to do is run to get your handy-dandy first aid kit, and you're going to open it up, and this is what it will look like when it comes from the store. This is not good. This is what your kit will look like by the time we finish this video. Being organized allows you to be much more efficient at helping someone. So we're going to move this away now. The first thing I want you to do is to dump the contents of your kit on a table. And we are going to learn what every item that's there is for and how to use it. The first thing you need to put out is your PPE, or personal protective equipment. So that includes your mask, your goggles, and your gloves. And the reason you do this is because if someone is injured and you initially tend to them, you may have blood on your hands at that point. You don't want to contaminate the entire content of your kit. This way you just open one pocket and you have everything you need to protect yourself. And then you label it with a Sharpie marker, PPE. The next thing you need to do is find the tools in your kit. And you want to have them in the pocket on the other end. There's a small little pouch inside of that where you can put them so that you easily can find them and you can carry them away with you if you need to leave from where your bag is. The things that are in this pocket will be bandage scissors. These can be used to cut bandages. These can be used if you had to cut clothes off of someone. They can also be used to cut the splint that we'll show you later. There's a pair of forceps in there, and these are grabbers or clamps, you can call them if you want. These can be used to pick out large pieces of debris. They can be used to clamp something if you're trying to hold something in place. These are very useful. There's a seatbelt cutter in there, and this, very importantly, is a tourniquet. And if someone is bleeding massively, you want to be able to find this quickly. Other things you might consider adding to your kit that do not come with it are pen and paper, a Swiss Army knife or the equivalent. I use a headlamp because it frees up your hands. If you have to use both hands to do something and you can't see, this is very practical. And the other thing is I have a heavy-duty flashlight. This kit was designed with the focus on major injuries you might see during an earthquake. Many of the things you find in this kit can be used for other scenarios, but it's heavily weighted towards injuries you are likely to encounter after an earthquake has happened. So what kind of injuries are most likely to occur after an earthquake? First is cuts or lacerations. Second are scrapes and bleeding, scrapes and abrasions. Think road rash, and either of these can lead to bleeding. The next kind of injury you're likely to encounter are orthopedic injuries, meaning broken bones, sprained ankles, ligament tears, ligament sprains, dislocated joints. So you have equipment in here to deal with those as well. The third kind of injury you might encounter are injuries to eyes. Debris flies, it can get in people's eyes. Your cornea can get scratched. So we have supplies in here to deal with those things. The fourth thing you might encounter are burns. And the fifth thing you might encounter is someone in shock. If you find a victim who has been cut by, let's say, shards of glass, and is bleeding profusely, bright red bleeding, it's pumping, your first instinct should be to take your gloved hand and to put pressure on it, which is a treatment for stopping bleeding. If it's not as severe bleeding, then take the time to pull out your bag labeled bleeding and lacerations and use a sterile 4x4 to put pressure on, so that the layer against the skin is a sterile layer, which means it's in a package and it's clean and germ-free. The other things you have in this bag to use are, and I'll show you how to open a sterile package. What you want to do is grab the corners and pull the two layers apart. Do not touch the contents inside. Pull it back like this, and you grab it with your gloved hand. Your gloves are not sterile, but they should be clean. You pinch it between two fingers like this, and then you float it down onto the wound and continue putting pressure on it. You also have a combine pad. This is a bigger version of a dressing. This is 5x9, and this is for bigger cuts or something that's small but bleeding profusely. Again, this is sterile packaging. You have to do the same thing. And in here, you've got a whole pile, 200 4x4 gauzes. These are not sterile, they're clean. And this should be used if, let's say the bleeding continues, you're still applying pressure, you need to apply more pressure. Do not remove the first gauze that's sterile, just pile more of these non-sterile ones on top and continue holding pressure. If you finally get the bleeding under control, that's great, then you can wrap the wound, depending on the size of it, with a gauze roll called Curlex, or here they call it crinkle gauze roll, or you can tape it in place. If the bleeding doesn't stop as a last resort, then you use a tourniquet, which is in your tools bag here. If someone has a more minor cut or an abrasion, road rash, that sort of thing, the most important thing you need to do, if it's not bleeding, is to irrigate the wound. And in your two front pockets here, you have a bulk syringe. It's like the thing you used to clean your kid's nose out with when they had a cold. And you have sterile water, sterile saline, excuse me, and you can use this to irrigate the wound to get it out. If you don't have access to this, you run out of this, just water out of garden hose is fine at this point. If somebody has a really debrided, horrible surface, it's got all kinds of dirt from shards or whatever in it, you may want to wipe that transiently with betadine and then rinse that off, and that will sterilize it. You also have a package of antiseptic applicators. These are betadine applicators. You've got some alcohol in here, and these are just for cleaning the skin area, not for cleaning the inside of the wound. So you just label those so you know how to reach for them immediately. So it's important that you always put your things away, assuming that they have not been contaminated, so that they're ready for the next time if you need them. And I put them in order of what I would use first on the top. So that would be the 4x4s and the combine pads. If you notice that a package is sort of torn or ripped, it's no longer considered sterile. So you should not put that directly on the skin wound. The next bag we have in here is the final dressing. So once you've taken care of the bleeding and that's no longer an issue, then you need to dress the wound. And you can do that in a number of ways, and this compartment has items that you need for that. If the wound is gaping, you can use steri strips to pull the two sides of the skin edges together. You can also use a Tegaderm, which is a totally adhesive sticky thing, and this will, if you put antibiotic cream on the wound, always ask the patient if they're allergic to anything before you do this, then you can apply this over top of the antibiotic cream and it'll stay in place. Other things in here are something called Coban. It's an adhesive dressing. It sticks to itself. This is great if you have a large wound you need to wrap, because you can wrap it with this and it will adhere and keep the dressing in place. And you can see how sticky it is when you pull it, and it's stretchy. The other thing you have is eye tape, and what's important about this is it's latex free and it will not irritate the skin. This is the other thing you can use to secure a dressing. The reason to keep these two bags separate is when you're using the laceration bleeding bag, you may contaminate the entire contents of it. You want to be able to then throw the whole bag out because you can't rely on this being uncontaminated, which is a reason not to use reusable plastic bags. This one you keep separate because you've got the bleeding under control. This is just to put the final dressing on, which is why they should be in 2 separate bags. Your next large bag will be labeled Ortho, or Orthopedics, or Broken Bones, if you want to call it something more identifiable. And what we've got in here there's a SAM splint, and I have one over here that's open so you can see it. This is 36 inches long. This can be cut for smaller things. If it were just a wrist, you can cut it to a shorter length. It's malleable, and you can immobilize a fracture or a sprain, and you're not going to know for sure which it is. You put this on the patient, and then you use an ACE wrap to secure it on the patient. It should be above and below the break. Many patients that have either a dislocated shoulder, let's say, or an arm that's broken will guard. They'll hold that extremity against their chest to try to keep it immobile. And to help them do that, we have triangular bandages, and there's a short video on the website that teaches you how to make a sling out of this, so it's worth watching. The other important thing about treating any kind of fracture, sprain, it's going to swell. And we have little instant cold packs in there, and you should apply this not directly to the skin, put something on top of it, and this will help reduce swelling, as will elevation. Oh, and this can be cut with the bandage scissors, which is why we have those bandage scissors. Next, in the small compartments in the front, I don't know if you can see this, this thing has an inner compartmental divider. There are 8 small compartments in the front, and then there are these large ones in the back. So the things that have less items we put in the smaller, and the next one is for burns. If you're treating somebody who has a burn, number one, you need to cool the burn down. And you do that with, if you have sterile water, sterile saline, you use sterile saline. If you don't, whatever you have, tap water is fine, just cool the burn down. Once you cool the burn down, you need to dress the wound, and always use sterile 4x4s against a burn. Also included in your kit are these things called burn shields. These are also excellent for being a burn dressing. People that are burned, especially if it's an extensive burn, lose a lot of fluid because the skin's not holding it in anymore. They get dehydrated, and they also get very cold because they're evaporating that fluid. So there is a Mylar blanket inside with the burn stuff, and you should always think about keeping that patient warm. The other Ziploc in one of these front compartments is for shock. Shock is when the body is not delivering oxygen to the organs, and if someone in a state of shock can die because they basically are not getting blood to their heart or their brain. The causes for that are many, but probably the most likely you will encounter is someone has had enough of a bleed that they no longer can carry oxygen. Oxygen is carried on hemoglobin molecules in your blood. So the important thing about shock is to treat the cause of the shock. If somebody's bleeding extensively, that should be your primary focus. However, other causes of shock that you can treat that are in this little bag are someone whose sugar has gotten too low. This is a hyperconcentrated sugar solution. There's smelling salts in here. I'd say the only real use for these is just to see if somebody is just fainted or they're truly unconscious. And again, it is critical that you keep these patients warm, unless it's from heat stroke, in which case you don't want to do that. So there's a Mylar blanket. Another large baggie is for eyes, and this contains ophthalmic solution that you can use to irrigate someone's eye. It's much better to flush out debris with the fluid than it is to try to pick it out. So you can just use copious amounts of this to get anything out of the eye. If someone has a scratch of their cornea, something has hit their eye, you may want to patch it, and you have oval eye patches in here. And to attach these to the patient, you place it against the eye, make sure that their eyelid is closed, then you use the eye tape and go from their forehead down to their cheekbone. And that'll secure this and keep the eyelid from rubbing against the abrasion, and it helps it to heal. And lastly, I have another bag that's labeled Hazmat. Anything that has been contaminated by blood or any other bodily secretion is not acceptable to put in a trash can. You have to dispose of it separately. So I carry a little bag around where I can put any of the bloody bandages in this and then dispose of it appropriately. And just a brief word about COVID, since we seem to be stuck with it for a while. I have extra supplies in my bag specifically to protect me and protect the victim from either of us transmitting COVID. You have to assume that anyone you come in contact with, and possibly you, could be a carrier. So I carry extra masks, which we put on the patient. There's several different types of N95 masks. This mask will not protect you from getting COVID. This kind of mask, which is an N95, and it's important to check and make sure it's NIOSH certified, will protect you, but because it's got a valve, that's not effective at protecting the victim. The other N95 mask that is the kind you should have is this, like this. So there's no valve in it. Therefore, you can't exhale anything on the patient. Other things I have are an O2 sat monitor, a touchless temperature monitor. Because you may be going through a lot of gloves, and if you're not doing fine, delicate work, you don't need nitrile gloves like this necessarily, which are more expensive. You can just get a bag or a box of these food handler gloves. So let's say you need to grab something out of your kit. This is perfectly fine to grab stuff with. Can't suture with it, but you can grab things. Also, hand sanitizer should be in your bag, as well as some sort of disinfectant. The betadine that you have in your kit, if you have to use any of your tools, this is effective at killing COVID, and you can sterilize your instruments with this. So the way that things are placed in this bag is so that I can grab the supplies for the most serious of injuries. Those are in the center compartment. The other things are distributed around the periphery. For example, the eyes are in this side compartment. It's very important that you keep your tools and your PPE easily accessible. And when you place things in your bag, make sure that you can see the labels. So you can either go immediately to what you need, or you can instruct somebody else to go grab the bag that says bleeding, and they will come back with what you need. This course is not intended as a first aid course. It was intended to help you know how to make your first aid kit as user-friendly as possible, and to familiarize yourself with the items that are in it and know how to use them. Being organized means you can be more efficient and more effective at treating a victim. Thank you so much for tuning into our video, and hope you never need any of this information. On the video, you will see a link to this, which is on WPV-Ready. And this contains all the information and pictures of the setup that you've seen today. So you can refer to this when you're trying to get your kits together.
Okay.
Hey everybody, I'm Rick Beato. On today's episode, I'm going to count down 10
Hold on,
of my...
hold on. Sorry about that.
What was that?
I almost thought we got bombed for a second, so that's
So did I, and I was like, oh my gosh, who's doing that? And I realized it's me. It's this channel. It's this music producer I like to listen to because he analyzes all the old tunes and says, oh, and they're using this interesting trick and so forth. But he's very energetic, and I thought we were getting crashed into so hard. Sorry.
Can
Please.
you share the slides that, or the info that Vicki will be talking about next, please?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh.
So just as a brief intro into the history of this bag, as veteran DLs and division leaders and CERTs know, we used to have over 100 trauma bags distributed randomly throughout all the divisions. And the problem that we found with those was that when we did a survey to find them, many of them were missing. Many of them were in the hands of someone to whom they weren't assigned, and many of them hadn't been updated. And our thinking changed to making people responsible for their own personal preparedness. And that's how this bag came into evolution, because we were thinking that it would increase community participation in their own preparedness. It would decrease the concept that the town or someone will bail you out of this when we have a big earthquake. And the third one was to eliminate the dilemma of, if only one person has this trauma bag for an entire neighborhood and they're not out of town when the earthquake hits, people will be left without supplies. So it seemed much better to design this and have every household as prepared as they could possibly be for injuries should they occur. The first slide talks about things that we already touched on in the video of items that you might want to add to your first aid kit. And these are things that I would put in the tool pocket so they're readily accessible. Those include a Swiss Army knife, a headlamp, I think is really superior to a flashlight, but you might want to have both. Green sticks, which if this happens in the night, you can at least demarcate where the patient is. Plastic bags for biohazard waste. Duct tape is the most useful substance on earth. Just don't put it on anybody's skin. Pen and paper, it's good to have a Sharpie marker in case you have to do the markings. If there's a building that's been destroyed, it's nice to have that in your bag. In the old days, we used to have ring cutters in our bag. They're pretty expensive and it's important you know how to use one, but they can save somebody from losing a finger. And the other thing you can consider is getting 60 cc syringes that are the catheter kind, not the ones that fit a needle, because those are useful at directing a sharp jet of irrigation at a wound to try to get it clean. Next slide, or Chip.
I'm very sorry. Here you go. Next slide.
I just want to mention one thing really quick. With somebody just said in the chat room to add reading glasses, and what is interesting is a lot of people who've bought this first aid kit have created, have turned it into their go bag. So when there's a wildfire or something where they just need to grab their bag and evacuate, they've now created, they've tweaked this bag and added stuff to it, such as reading glasses. And we've recommended, you know, adding prescription medication and whatnot. So this bag is evolving as you go, but yeah, absolutely. If you need to wear reading glasses, that would be really good to have an extra pair in there.
It'd be fun if we had some way to gather the information of things that people have added, just to give other people ideas about maybe what they want to place in here. Medications will be another one that leaps to mind. So there's several additions and this is both for CERTs and people that just are potentially might end up treating a neighbor and you don't know their COVID status. So things you might want to have are a no-touch thermometer. If you have a digital thermometer, that's probably fine too, but you have to figure out how to sterilize it. An O2 sat monitor, and I'm sure all of you have heard that there are patients that become very hypoxic or low oxygen with no symptoms except they have an elevated respiratory rate. And with an O2 sat monitor, you can see if these are the patients that are totally desaturated, even though they look fine, they're talking, and everything looks okay. It's a useful tool to have. Disposable plastic aprons are a nice thing to add to your kit. I have one here that's open because if you have to go from victim to victim, you want to be able to protect your clothing so your clothing isn't contaminated, and you don't want to go with contaminated things to the next victim. So these you can buy at an art store, you can buy them on Amazon, and they're great. And again, this would go in a hazmat bag after you're done with it. There are different kinds of gloves that you can get. The food handler gloves are very inexpensive, and they come in a package of 100, I think. I would keep a package of 100 in there, because if you need to go see 5, 10 different patients, you want to be able to change gloves between each one. The nitrile gloves are nice to have if you're doing small tasks. They're more expensive, and some of these things, as the pandemic seems to be raging on, we don't want to take supplies away from frontline workers. At the moment, we're not running into shortages, but a couple months ago we were. There are a number of different kinds of masks that serve different purposes. So as we showed you in the video, there's a N95 mask. This one is not ideal because it has a valve. It's great if you want to get exercise. It's great for the smoky days we had, if you're just trying to keep from breathing all that stuff. There are also the N95s that are the one, well, you saw them in the video. Those protect both you and your patient, your victim, from contamination. You also, if you don't want to buy a whole bunch of masks or they're not accessible, there's also this really cute number that's called an Elastomeric Mask. And it's reusable, it's sterilizable, it has filters on it that are replaceable. So you can filter out pretty much everything. There's a even higher level than this one, which is a 95, which is 100. Chip has one of those. It's pretty cool looking. The other thing you might want to think about getting are some face shields and putting those in your bags. Obviously hand sanitizer, disinfectant, and you want to have biohazard bags, because every victim you see, anything that touches them should go into a separate bag. Next slide.
There we go. Vicky, I just want to, well, did you have a slide 3 that you gave me? I only have 1, 2, and 4 here.
Probably not.
Okay, well, great. I just wanted to show people too that on that mask that has the removable filter cartridges. Oh, hang on. There we go. Yeah. So those two filters on the side are removable and replaceable. So, and they're relatively inexpensive. And then you can also get this that snaps right onto the same mask. And this gives you protection from gas. You know, so if there's been a chemical spill or something and you're trying to shelter in place and you got this on hand, then you have a chance of being able to go out and do something while there's still nasty stuff in the air. Be sure that you understand the limitations before you try any stunt like that, though, I tell you. Anyhow, just wanted to tell you about those masks. They're great. These are the masks, by the way, that if you see people working in an industrial environment or in your house taking out mold or asbestos or what have you, this is what professionals that have to use these filters all day for their work. This is the level that they go to, and it's not much more expensive.
Will you show the masks one more time? Just put them out to the camera. And how much does that run, Vicki?
I think it was $22, something like that.
How much
it's not expensive.
The filters?
The filters were 20 approximately.
Right.
Oh, they're only seeing the slide. Sorry.
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Hold on. Let's go back to.
Yeah. Let me just stop that share, and in fact, let me stop my goofy stuff with the video so that everyone can see.
Thank you.
Stop that. Virtual background off.
All right, what is the name of that mask?
It's called an elastomeric, Elastomeric, and it's made by 3M, and you can get it on Amazon.
All right.
Thank
And then this clips around behind, and then these clip on to the side to give you that full P100. That means oily, nasty stuff in the air. It's even better than an N95, and it has, again, a gas filtration. So if you got just nasty, noxious chemicals in the air, it helps with that too. And I think that a full-sized, this is a large, I think this was now $40 on Amazon, and I forget how much the cartridges were, but you get I think you get a 2-pack of the P100 filters like Vicky was showing you for $25.
I think the main point to mention in this is just to ensure that the masks are rated properly, and, you know, do a little bit of research, you know, because Amazon, you know how they can put stuff on Amazon. Oh, this looks like a great price. And, you know, it shows it to be what you want. And then you order it and it's something completely different. So just make sure you do your due diligence, and that it's NIOSH certified. I think that's what Vicky would say, correct? For
Yes,
any type of
many,
mask.
I mean, I think the problem has been that many of the masks from China, not to pick on China, are billed as being KN95s. And in fact, they're not certified and they're not recognized in the US as being effective. And some of them are actually defective. If you want an alternative that has been proven to be more reliable, it's the KF94s that are manufactured in Korea. And I brought one with me, and I guess it dropped out in the car. But anyway, those are NIOSH certified. It's slightly less, it has slightly less filtration, but 1 micron is probably not going to make a difference.
Yeah, not really. Yeah,
The other thing you can do that I do so that I don't look like I'm terrified that I'm going to get COVID all the time, you can buy Masseter cloth masks, and they come with a pocket inside. And then I stick one of those inside of here. So basically, I have double filtration. I'm protecting myself plus protecting everybody else.
I just want to point out, for maximum safety, and you know that it's been certified by US standards, if it doesn't have this NIOSH, N-I-O-S-H stamp on the mask itself, then you really don't know what you're getting, and you need to do more research.
And
At this point, I'd actually put it out to everyone who's joined us. What questions do you have with regards to the organization of the kit or the materials in the kit? You can either unmute yourself or you can add it to the chat session.
I want to point out too, Bob Sullivan just mentioned in chat, thank you so much for pointing that out, that these are industrial grade masks, and you can get these at Ace Hardware, at Home Depot, and so forth. You don't need to get those through any kind of medical supply. If you see them at Ace Hardware, and it's a 3M mask being sold for those purposes, it's the same standard.
But I would suggest that if you're going to get those, it's a good thing to have, and it's a good thing to get now before we get deeper into this pandemic, because you couldn't buy these, you know, in April. They were just not available. Nobody had them. So
Yeah, it's
stock up while you don't need them.
It's apparent that the numbers are obviously going up right now. So to kind of be ahead of the game here, in preparation for stuff like that is really important.
You're going to hear the suppliers too say, oh, we learned our lesson and we're ahead of it and we got plenty stocked and so forth, but don't trust it. Go ahead and stock up now while you can get your hands on these things.
So Vicky, there was a question in the chat session asking about the value of adding either Tylenol or ibuprofen in addition to baby aspirin. And actually that's something we didn't talk about in general, was medications. If you want to talk about that for a moment, that'd be great.
Sure. So one of the things that CERT training tells you is that if you're going to administer any medication to somebody, you don't administer it yourself. You ask first if they have allergies. You also have them take it themselves, not you physically feeding it to them. So baby aspirin is great if somebody you suspect has had a heart attack or is in the process, has chest pain, ischemia. A baby aspirin can be very useful. Tylenol is good for fevers. It depends on how comfortable you are with playing doctor or playing nurse or playing whatever. Ibuprofen, you need to ask whether they have any ulcer issues. With Tylenol, do they have any liver issues? You just have to be careful if you're going to carry those. If this is just for your family, absolutely throw in all that stuff. If you're using it as a CERT out in the field, you have to be very, very careful about what you give to patients.
Well, and as a CERT, we're not allowed to medicate anyone.
No.
So we cannot give you something or put it in your mouth. We can tell you, here, you've got, I have some ibuprofen. Would you like it? And if they give it to themselves, that's great. Or if they ask you to put it in their mouths, that's great. It just can't be something that you do.
I think
And
it's important.
something that I'd like to just throw out there is keep in mind that when you're talking about emergency response and any kind of first responder role, you're really trying to address those things that are going to be life-threatening injuries, and that we are not acting as the replacement for the healthcare system, but we are acting as first responders. And so I think that Vicky's point of when you're thinking about having something that is the long-term kit for yourself and for family, that's a very different mindset than being the first responder and really addressing immediate needs.
Yeah.
And one more thing too to add to the medication part is the reason why we talk about baby aspirin and no other types of medication is if you ever take an American Heart Association course, a certified CPR course or first aid course, we tell you that in cases where it's suspected that somebody is having a heart attack, to give them baby aspirin, but nothing else, because if they're having a stroke, you don't know if it's a clot or if it's a bleed. So that's why we only really talk about baby aspirin for one very specific thing, but in CERT, we don't even talk about medication at all.
Just want to point out how you can easily use an outer mask to make your N95 more stylish. And I'm afraid my sister made this for me, or I'd be selling them on the website.
Actually, you can get these on Zazzle. That's
Yes.
one of my paintings. How's that for a tacky
Oh,
quote?
get those.
Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, Vicki, can you tell us a little bit about the smelling salts and what that's good for? Because that's kind of an advanced notion that some people might not be aware that there's reasons to not use them. Can you?
You know, in the past, they used to use them because they thought that it would awaken somebody and get their heart rate up if somebody had vasovagal and their heart rate had slowed down. It's an unpredictable response, what people are going to have to them, and probably they're more dangerous than not. But I think if you see somebody sort of just pass out transiently, it might be something that will get them going. Honestly, I'm not sure why they stayed in the kit. I think that was on the initial
I think we had
kit.
yeah, I think we had meant to take them out actually.
Yeah.
Because there was some controversy about it, and also because if you do happen to be able to get someone on an ambulance right away, then when they're starting to take their vitals and so forth, it's not clear how much the smelling salts have
Affected their vital signs.
right?
Yeah.
So I think we intended to take them out, but they ended up still on the list, and so they're in the kits now. But just kind of be aware of these. It's only a last resort kind of thing, and just if you're trying to figure out if someone is really unconscious, hardcore, or just kind of fainting. Is that a fair way to?
Yep.
Come on, baby.
Good.
I have a question, or Abigail has a question.
If you wear about mask sizing, because in the old days, they used to do fit testing on masks. I used to work in a hospital and they used to do fit testing, but they're not even doing that in hospitals anymore. So,
Yeah, they are.
well, they're doing, yeah, but not for everybody out on the floors. I mean, I don't know who they're doing it to, but they're not doing it in a lot of hospitals.
Yeah, we used to have to go in once a year, and they'd sit there and they keep saying, "Do you smell the strawberries? Do you smell the orange?" You'd be there forever unless you said, "No, I don't smell it anymore." I think they're more cautious about doing fit testing still if somebody is working in infectious disease areas or they're in areas where there's isolation.
Yeah.
But you know, at this point, any protection is better than none.
Oh yeah, but I was thinking, like, if I wore like a large size N95 mask, do you think that for an elastomeric mask, probably a large size as well? Because I have a big face.
Yeah.
I think that would be, yeah.
Well, probably.
And
Okay.
the insides of these now are very, it's very flexible and it seals amazingly well.
Mm, okay.
It used to be that this really flexible material would kind of get brittle and just deteriorate very quickly. But this is very, I mean, the modern rubberized materials are kind of amazing to me. They're very, yeah, see, like Vicky has there. This stuff seals incredibly well, and I think if you're a little oversized, it's not going to bother you. But you know, the typical advice is if you can blow out and you hear it hissing out the sides, it's not that well sealed. If you can suck in, it should still suck tight to your face when you breathe in. So, you know, just that kind of common sense level, you're most of the way there.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You bet.
Vicki, what mask were you saying that you put in the mask that has the little pocket?
Oh, I put an N95 in here. Actually, I've been using the Korean ones, and I just stuff it in the pocket. So then I put the loops of that over my ears as well as this. So then I have 3 layers of protection, one of which is to keep anything I exhale from going out. But also the other layer, the N95 or KF94, which is what I've been using because I was able to get a bunch, that keeps me from sucking in viral particles.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Vicki, do you have any recommendations for the cloth type mask in terms of like sanitation or disinfecting them, since those ideally could be used again? And I know there's a lot of different ways that they say to disinfect them.
You know, for the manufactured masks that are the N95s and things, if you put them in a washing machine, it will destroy them at some point. It may work for a day or two, but you don't want to chance that. Those need to be either put in the sun. If you have access to UV lights somehow, that'll disinfect them. As far as the cloth masks go, they recommend that you wash them before you get them. Wash them in hot water. Not cold water, not warm water, hot water, and most of them are pretty durable. And you should do that every single day after you wear one of these. The other thing you want to think about is when you go to take these off, and I know people end up doing this all the time, including me, because their mask slides down. Ideally, you don't want to touch the outside surface of this, because if it's gathering stuff that's coming in and you touch the outside, you're potentially touching virus. So you should always remember to take them off from the inside out, not the other way around, particularly with the N95s. And bandanas are not effective. So those people that have those bandanas like hanging around here, those 2 thin layers of cotton have proved to actually be worse because the weave is so loose that it causes particles to get aerosolized instead of being droplets. And they actually are worse in terms of putting the virus out there in the air in small, tiny little aerosolized bits.
Yeah, they go further.
Yeah.
So another question I'd like to put out there is, are there any aspects of the kit that that we didn't go over that you would like to know more about, or other recommendations of thoughts that you've had that you would want us to consider for future versions of the kit?
Marcy?
Yeah, I have a question. Could somebody address the proper way? And I know that there's a proper way to do it, but so that everybody would know, to remove the gloves.
Oh, sure.
It could be contaminated. So
That's a very good point. Let me grab a pair of mine.
And by the way, there are at least a half dozen good videos. If you go onto YouTube and search donning and doffing PPE, you will find a lot of this. And if you say donning and doffing gloves, you'll get a lot of the medical grade stuff. And in our CERT classes, if anybody hasn't had the CERT basic training, we cover that in there too, because in fact what we do when we can do the face-to-face is we go around, you put the gloves on and you put shaving cream in your hand, and then the practice drill is, can you take that glove off without getting shaving cream on anything? And after 2 or 3 tries, it's not too hard, but it takes a little practice. It takes a little practice. Go ahead. Yeah, Vicky's got some gloves. Yeah.
So here are your gloves. These are all bloody and icky. So what do you want to do is grab the edge. Don't touch your skin. Grab the edge and you pull this glove off. And then you ball it up in the other glove. Then you're going to take this one, and now you can touch your skin. You reach into the inside. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. There.
Yeah.
Reach
Put it
in
in front of your face.
And then you pull this one on top of the other one. So the other one is inside of this glove, and the inside should be clean. And the outside of the glove that's been touching the patients is inside of this little balled up thing. And this, again, goes in hazmat. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I think too, what's really important is when you're taking off your gloves to also just take your time doing it. People just start to rush and they get really anxious about it, especially when we're practicing and when you have people come up to practice in front of each other. So when you're doing it, make sure too that your hands are aiming away from anybody else as well as yourself, and that you just take your time taking off the gloves, because there's a lot of stuff that can become airborne that you're not going to be able to see.
Yeah, and don't do this, like flick them off, because that stuff can start to fly. So
Yeah.
The classic
it's like-
doctor move.
It's like trying to take a rubber band off. It just, it goes everywhere if you do it fast.
And one thing I can't stress enough, because I totally screwed up. If you use something in your kit, be very conscientious about replacing it exactly where it came from. If it's one of the tools, because I don't have we had splinter forceps in these kits as well, and mine aren't in here because I took a splinter out of somebody. And it's so easy to just walk away from the scene and never look at this kit again until you need it again. And next time you need it, you may have used what you're going to need and you don't have it. So be really diligent about replacing items if you use them.
I think one thing that was that I remember from EMT many years ago is that it's really important to, when you come upon a scene and there are victims or people that are injured, check the scene out first, make sure it's safe for you to go in. So you're not a victim that has to be rescued and taken care of. I remember that was really, really important at the very beginning.
Absolutely.
And actually, I'd like to just kind of put in here a plug that if you're not already aware of the fact that we are right now starting a new round of the CERT online training. In the past, we've done the CERT training as it being a number of evenings in person. We are now doing it as a hybrid course, so that there is an online component where all of the lecture components is going to be done online. And then at some point, we're hoping to do it in early February, all things being willing, that we'll be doing the hands-on skills then. We're starting that right now. I will put a link to the registration. Even if you know people who are interested, even though we're starting right now, you can start at any time. People can catch up. So if you have done CERT training and you say, you know, it's been a long time, I want to do it again, we encourage you to do so. And as a part of that, that will have some of the first aid training. I also really encourage people that first aid is something that when we're blessed with not using it on a regular basis, we do forget it. And so we will be providing some more first aid classes and more opportunities to discuss, but definitely this is our teaser trailer for more to come.
So this is really great, Cam. And my question is, if you've registered for it, will we automatically get notifications now, or do we have to kind of catch up with it as it goes along? How does it operate once we've registered?
So the registration is what we're doing registration through Eventbrite. And basically that's just our gathering the mailing list. At that point, you will receive an introductory email that tells you where to register. The version of the online course we're using is actually out of University of Utah's School of Medicine. It is a nationally recognized CERT curriculum. They've taken the existing curriculum and made the online version of it, done an amazing job of it. In order to support that, we are doing some local additional materials. In particular, we are doing an online discussion group so that when you sign up with Eventbrite, you then get an email from us that's saying, this is how to register on University of Utah's page. And you do that, and then you take those units on your own. And then we support you and kind of give it a chance to see what does that look like here. By both we have a discussion list, and then we have a number of Monday meetings. Next one is actually next Monday, and that's a chance for people to ask questions and for us to share what that material looks like here in Woodside and Portola Valley. And so with that, we're hoping that people will have done Unit 1 by next Monday, but it's totally okay if people are catching up. We want people to join. So we've got those, and then the third component is the training classes that are like this, which are for everybody. I hope that answers the question.
So in other words, we're supposed to basically see the learning unit first, and then if we can, discussion,
Right.
and then
So
any supplemental material.
the discussion is optional. It's not a required part, but it is a strongly encouraged, because the essence of a community emergency response team is that we are working as a team. And the big thing that we don't get by not meeting in person is that we don't get to meet each other. We don't get to know who each other are. And so we're hoping that these Monday Zoom meetings will be a chance to get some names and faces, and also to know how this material is used here in Woodside Portola Valley. What are our specific risks? How are we organized as a group? What does it look like locally?
Okay, I think we've hit our time mark. If there are, I think Cam, they're saying thank you so much. I think we're going to put the link for the registration for the class. I want to say, first of all, thank you too so much to Vicky and Cam and Chip, who put in all this work to put this class together. This training, it just kind of came out of nowhere. And we do have a couple of additional courses coming up that you can access on our WPV-CERT.org website. I think we have a communications class coming up, and
So it's radio, and then
radio,
IC.
and then incident command.
Yeah.
So
Setting
we're
up
really
the command
excited.
post.
Yeah, we're really excited to be pushing forward these classes. We'll be updating all this information as we get it. This first aid kit is kind of like the first generation. So there's obviously going to be a version of it once we order more. So just so you guys are aware, the way we purchase them is we have to purchase them in 100 count lots. So in a bulk amount of 100 at a time. So I think we're just about pretty much done with the lot that we had purchased earlier, and we're ready to take more orders and purchase more. So you may order one, or there may be people who want to order more, and we may not have them immediately available, but obviously we will be ordering more, and we may have some additions or edits to it depending on how far along we are with the program. But just want to say thank you so much to all of you guys. I don't know if any of you want to say anything in closing. I think it was great.
I want to add one little note, and that is that if you buy one right now, we used to have pickup days before the plague struck. And so there were a lot of opportunities to come out to the fire station or what have you and pick them up. But now that we're in lockdown, I've been working to set up a system so that we can ship directly. But in the meantime, pickup's over at my home. So I look forward to meeting you in the driveway with masks on. And I promise my hands will be freshly sanitized as I hand you your first aid kit. And just bear in mind too that things like the registration for CERT classes is on the WPV-CERT website, but you buy those first aid kits over on the WPV-Ready.org site. Those are more commonly available to everybody who wants to get prepared. But as CERTs, that's where you find them too.
And they make a great holiday present.
Oh, they're wonderful. I've given them to all my kids. Yes.
Give the gift of safety is what
Safety.
I say.
Yeah, especially because we don't have the gift fair this year. So
Right? Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Please don't hesitate to contact any of us, through our website. Please share the classes coming up. Otherwise, we really appreciate you coming on here today, and we look forward to seeing you again in some other classes.
thanks, everybody.